أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد اللهم صل على محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. We ask Allah to help us during these times, these difficult times. Sometimes we look at what's going around the world and we feel hopeless or we feel overpowered. And we have this in our du'as. In dua iftitah, for example, we complain about the abundance of our enemies. And during this time and during these last 10 months that we've been seeing the genocide that has been taking place in Gaza, sometimes we feel hopeless, we have despair. And we're wondering what is going on? When is Allah going to assist the oppressed? When is Allah going to remove oppression? So tonight's discussion is a continuation about this important topic as to what are the factors of despair and how can we overcome them? Some people look at Ashura of Imam Hussein alayhi salam and they say that is limited to Imam Hussein. He had a mission and he performed it. We just have to mourn for Imam Hussein and that's it. Is that, in your opinion, something adequate? Is it sufficient? When we have for example, Muharram and we give lots of food, we do lots of lutmiyah and hit ourselves and cry. Is that sufficient for us in terms of remembering Imam Hussein alayhi salam? Or is it that we're looking for something else and looking to become Husseini, looking to give life to the message of Imam Hussein? One of the great scholars that was very influential, especially in Lebanon, was As-Sayyid Musa As-Sadr. He was actually an Iranian scholar. He learned Arabic, he knew Arabic. And he moved to Lebanon to help the Shia and those that followed Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam there. And when he spoke Arabic, just to show you how much influence he had, he actually spoke Arabic with a slight Farsi accent. And because they loved him so much, even today there are areas where they remember that sweet Farsi accent that Sayyid Musa Sadr had. He has a speech where he tells us and warns us, and I apologize for saying this, but this is a reality. He says, do not be like those that cry for Imam Hussein, yet they behead Imam Hussein. Do not be like those that cry for Imam Hussein, but behead Imam Hussein. And he asks, how can you behead Imam Hussein alayhi salam? He says that you cry for him, you mourn for him, but you crush his message. You change his message. You don't spread the message of Ashura to the people. What is the message of Ashura, for example? Fighting against one of them, Islah, reformation, changing society, fighting against oppression. So when you remove that aspect from Ashura and you make it just a ritual, you can be like those that is crying for Imam Hussein alayhi salam, but you're beheading because you're killing the message of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. So remember, Ashura has a very important message for us. How to be selfless. How to have hope when there are 30,000 people coming to kill you. When you are starved. When you are thirsty, deprived of water. How can I have hope at such a time? When you look at your own personal life, sometimes it's just something as insignificant as a little trip, a little family gathering. Sometimes you get overwhelmed. You say, I cannot do this anymore. This is too difficult for me. Or when it comes to your job or work, you say, this is too difficult for me, for example. But how did Imam Hussein alayhi salam, with all the factors of despair, what are the factors of despair? For example, starvation, being threatened to be martyred, to be killed, being with your wife and children, when basically everyone else is there with armor and horses, and they have different weapons, for example. So Ashura is about 72, 100 people fighting against 10,000, fighting against 30,000, but not losing hope. If you ever think of Imam Hussein alayhi salam's revolution, think that one man one day stood in the plains of Karbala and fought waves of army and rushed into that army. And today I ask you, because Imam Hussein alayhi salam did not lose hope, and that Lady Zainab alayhi salam mentions that I have nothing but beauty, who won? Whose message spread? When you look at that time, yes, you see butchered bodies. But today, you look at the Arba'een, which is coming in front of us, of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, and you see 20 million people going to the grave of Imam Hussein after 1400 years. The largest peaceful yearly human gathering in the world. And you see the Bani Abbas, they came. We don't approve of Bani al-Abbas, but we say to them that they took the body of Muawiyah, they took the body of Yazid from the grave, and they uncovered it, and they dishonored their body. That is what happened to Muawiyah and Yazid. But you see the holy body of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, and today the shrines they build, every day is becoming larger, and every day we wish that we are part of this great movement of remembering Imam Hussein alayhi salam. So tonight's discussion is about a very important message of Ashura, and that is one that is needed in this time, in 2024. And that is that we tell the young, we tell the old not to lose hope. Sometimes they have so many different exams, from the SAT, ACT, from, for example, extracurricular activities, and they do not get into that university where they want to. They have depression, they have anxiety. And they need to learn from Imam Hussein alayhi salam not to lose hope. Or sometimes someone seeks marriage. He goes once, he goes twice, say, no, we don't want you. Two, they don't want you. And yet they lose hope. They say, I will never be married. This is wrong. Or sometimes someone commits a sin, and shaitan wants to bring you down and tells you, you will never be forgiven. We understand that even sometimes some of the imams, and this is hard for us to explain, sometimes there was a person and he was crying, and they're wondering, he's wailing, he's like, what happened? He says, I have sinned. And Imam comes to him, alayhi salam, it's mentioned, what happened? He says, I passed a terrible judgment. I passed a judgment for death for an innocent person. An innocent person, I was responsible of his killing. Terrible sin. What would you say? Say, that's it. You're finished. At least have your dunya, your akhirat is finished, for example. At that time, the Imam mentions to him that go to that family, ask for forgiveness, give them diyah, for example. Go in them and still hope. There's still basically hope for you. Yes, we're not saying that everything will be 100%, for example, in murder. Yes, there's haqqun nas. But you try to alleviate some of the pain that that family is suffering. There's still a way. When you look at the story, for example, of Hur, and you see that he is a Yazidi general, and if he came and he said, well, Imam Hussein alayhi salam would never forgive him because he stopped Imam Hussein alayhi salam before entering, for example, Kufa. He kept him in the area of Karbala. How could Allah forgive him? You see that he had hope. If Hur did not have hope, how would he change to be a Yazidi general and to go on the side of Imam Hussein? Very interesting, the afternoon of Ashura, Imam Hussein alayhi salam calls for help. And yet his companions and family members have passed away. He calls for help, and yet he is asking for help from the army of Yazid to guide them. Even when he makes that call, a few members come from the other army to him. He's still, if you want to say, what is the army of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, you say it is the army of hope. What is the army of Yazid? It is the army of despair. There are 5 factors that we're going to discuss tonight that cause us despair. And while we have these factors, we might lose hope in our personal lives. The first is that when we look at our lives, we see the first factor is sin. The first factor that can cause someone, a believer, to lose hope, and this happens especially with the youth, that sometimes what happens is that a person sins and he says, I'm not, for example, not worthy enough to come to the masjid. I should not pray with other individuals, for example. And he steps away from the community. He stops coming to the masjid. I should not pray to Allah. Allah does not want to see me pray. Sin is actually, when you look at the Holy Quran, sometimes God addresses the believers and those who have believed. Ya ayyuhal ladina amanu, for example. Sometimes God addresses in the Quran the sinners. Ya ibadiya alladhina asrafu ala anfusim. Sometimes there's khitab and a message for those that have sinned. Allah says in the Quran, O you servants of mine who have transgressed against yourselves. Ya ayyuhal ladhina asrafu ala anfusim. He's addressing not the believers in this verse, not necessarily those that are 100% pure. He's addressing the sinners. Allah speaks to the sinners. He says, those that have sinned against yourselves. And very interesting note, a lot of times you say, Dhalamtu nafsi. I have sinned myself. Because you cannot sin against God. You're not taking His right. You're not taking something away from Him. Because God is Ghaniyun Hamid. There's no need that He has of your worship. You're just hurting and harming yourself. Ya ibadiya alladhina asrafu ala anfusihim. O you servants of mine who have transgressed against your own selves, la taqnatu min rahmatillah. Message from the Quran. Do not have despair in the mercy of Allah. This is going to who? Who did we say the verse is going to? Those that did israf, those that did sin, those that did transgression. So the first thing that God forbid, if we are ever in this, especially those that are young, because they have desires, because we live in a society where there's sin all around us, there's temptation. Sometimes you look at one of the speakers, Marhum Asad Jafri has, I'm mentioning his name so he gets reward. He's actually saying that, when it comes to some of the actions in Islam, some of them are very easy, even though you think they're very hard. Who here has gone to Hajj, for example? I'm looking for the bald heads. Don't see most of those that have bald heads, they have gone to Hajj. So when you go to Hajj, difficult, especially now. Very difficult, right? Especially in the summer. Difficult to do all the a'mal, how much you have to research, there's so much ruling. He was saying, Asad Jafri was saying, Hajj is easy. Hajj is easy, performing the Hajj. Why do you think it's easy? Because you perform it once a year. Once in your lifetime. You just perform it once and you're done. You don't have to go again. Once in 70 years, 80 years. However hard it is, it's 2 weeks, whatever. The a'mal is like a few days. It takes a few weeks and you're done. He says, salat is hard. Why is salat hard? Because it's every day. For 70 years of life, for example. Not sinning is hard. Because not like Hajj, you do it once and it's over with. You've finished. Every day you have to not look, protect your eyes. Every day someone comes and they say, did you know this secret about this person? Oh, what did he do? Oh, do you know what this person said about you? What did he say? Did you know you were invited? Everyone was invited, but you weren't invited. No, la ilaha illallah, astaghfirullah. Let me not say anything behind their back. This is a challenge because it's happening all the time. Every day, controlling mouth. Every day, controlling eyes. Every day, controlling temper. This is something that is difficult. This is something that is hard. So therefore, when we come to sin, we have to realize that as believers, we might make a mistake. I'm not saying to you tonight that it's okay to sin. It is not okay to sin. But it is not okay if you sin to lose hope. That yas is worse than that sin, if you look at the narrations. That despair is worse than that sin. Because if you have hope, you say, Allah will forgive. Allah, as we said, even when the Imams was giving hope to a person that killed somebody, ordered death to somebody. Have you murdered somebody? No, you haven't murdered. You did sin against yourselves. You haven't prayed, for example. You have maybe eaten something that is haram, for example. You saw something you shouldn't have said. You heard something that you shouldn't have heard. So therefore, the first step, and if you remember this, that God forgives Quran, and the interesting thing about this verse, and Quran mentions that إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَغْفِرُ الذُّنُوبَ جَمِيعًا. Allah forgives all sins. Allah forgives. Just say that to yourself. Allah forgives all sins. Allah, if Hor didn't believe in this, he wouldn't come to the tent of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. إِنَّهُ هُوَ الْغَفُورُ الرَّحِيمُ. He is much forgiving. He is the dispenser of grace. This is the Allah that we believe. He will forgive you. It's never too late. The second thing that sometimes this affects the believing community is that there are times that we face difficulty and we make dua, we pray to Allah. For example, maybe our parents are sick, our children are sick, or I need something, for example, I cannot get married, I cannot have a child, or maybe my own health, I am sick myself, I'm in poverty. And they tell me, if you make this dua, if you read this verse of Quran, your affliction will be removed. And you recite it, you make dua, and you see, oh, nothing has changed. Some people, they say, sometimes I make dua for one thing, it becomes the opposite. It becomes worse. The second factor of despair is that sometimes we feel that God doesn't answer our prayers. And if you look at many of the atheists, those that have gone away from Allah, you see that it is not necessarily philosophical proofs that have made them become atheists. It was a personal experience they had, and they feel Allah betrayed them. God was mean to them. God was cruel to them. God must not exist because I'm calling Allah all the time, praying to Him, and nothing gets answered. So Imam Ali alayhi salam, or we have in some of the sayings and some of the instructions from our scholars, mentioned that when a dua is not answered, there's different reasons for it. One, a dua is answered, a supplication, a prayer is answered sometimes exactly how you want it. Allah, give me this. Exactly what you wanted happens. Sometimes it's not answered in that way you want it, but there is a replacement. And that replacement is something better. You wanted this house, for example, God, give me this house. It doesn't work. A few years later, Allah gives you a better house, better location, better than what you make dua for. Sometimes it's like that. You have to be patient. Third, sometimes the prayer is not answered so that Allah can remove danger from us. There's a bala happening. There's a calamity that's going to happen, a misfortune. God doesn't answer, takes away that good thing that you're praying for. And then reality, from there, what happens is that God repels danger from you. And you see, I say, pray, give me a house, for example. God removes danger from you. The fourth is in the hereafter. God gives you something in place of that. God gives you replacement in the hereafter. And we have in the traditions that we have is that we wish when we look in the hereafter that so many of our unanswered prayers get gathered to us, come, because God eventually will answer them. That we wish that maybe many of these prayers were not answered because God will give us something much greater in the hereafter. God saves that prayer, and maybe it's not good for you. Maybe it's something that is going to harm you. For example, let me give you, many times we pray for foolish things. Sometimes we are in comparison. We're in the Los Angeles area. There's many affluent people here, very rich people here. A lot of people on social media are saying that when you come here, it just bothers you so much in materialism. There's so many rich people that you better just pack up and leave because they're too rich. You can't compete with them. So those that are attached to the world, they come here and they make prayers just, for example, to become, more richer than someone else. They're not content with what they have. So this is not good for you. You make dua to have something that's actually going to harm you. God knows how much money to give you that's suitable for your progress. God knows how much health to give you. God sometimes will give you a little bit of affliction, a little bit of discomfort, so you come to Him and you ask Him more, and you don't leave the straight path. It's as if it's a medicine. You go to a doctor, he gives you a prescription that is for you. Sometimes we to take the prescription of someone else and you want to use it on you, that is wrong. This is God's prescription on someone else. So that is the other factor of despair, is that we have a factor that it comes to. For example, prayer is not answered. The third is failure. Sometimes it comes to our personal lives and we fail in it. For example, how do we fail? We said in our business life, when it comes to marriage, sometimes when it comes to even friendship, we fail. This causes me to be sad. This causes me to lose hope. We had a person come in the traditions. We have a person by the name of Abu Tayyar comes to Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. He is a person that loses all his money. He is bankrupt. He is bankrupt and he comes to the Imam. He is afraid of doing business. I've seen business people sometimes, the market or prices or they get ripped off, that it comes in such a bad situation that sometimes they're afraid to do business anymore. They have to change their occupation. They said, I'm afraid of this more than a snake. So he comes to the Imam, and at that time, he is afraid to do business. The Imam actually encourages him, says, do you have money? Do you have real estate? Do you have a store? And he gives him a special dua, gives him a special prayer, and encourages this person to try again. To try again once more. Maybe the first time you failed, maybe the second time you'll be successful. And he teaches them a nice dua. He says, do this. توجهت بلا حول مني بلا حول مني ولا قوة ولكن بحولك وقوتك. I seek for you. I seek and I face the fact that I do not have any power in me. But I turn to the fact that power is in you. To go and ask Allah. And this person, Abu Tayyar, became very successful actually. Now with the guidance of Imam Sadiq, now with having hope, he tried the second time and was successful. We actually have an interesting story from Ayatollah Ja'far Subhani. I'm not saying that these kings or rulers were good people or not. I'm not saying that. I'm just giving you a story. You maybe have heard, I'm sure here you know better than me. There's this Iranian Persian military commander by the name of Nader Shah. Nader Shah had wars with the Turks, the Ottomans. And he was looking to conquer Baghdad, for example. And some of the territory he had lost was taken from him. He goes to take Baghdad, but because of the heavy artillery and the numbers that the Turks had, he faces defeat. Actually, Nader Shah's own horse was pierced by an arrow and the animal drowned. Many people thought that maybe something happened and they fled, they ran away. So Nader Shah was forced to repeat. It was a humiliating defeat for someone like him, a military mind, a military commander. So what does he do? He lost so many soldiers. He doesn't give up. This Ayatollah Subhani gives this example. He says he goes back to other cities in Iran and gets more soldiers, more people, until he has an army of 200,000 people. In the same exact thing, he comes back now, and then he defeats the Turks. So we see that many people in the military, or some people in politics, or when it comes to the economy, they try again the second time. But what we have to do, and we have to make sure, is you have to make sure you plan properly, you study properly, you do your due diligence, you don't just jump into something, you don't do something foolish. But at the same time, you trust in Allah. This will help you succeed. There's a dua we have from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, a statement in Da'awat. There are 4 prayers that are never answered. I'm sure that many times you've heard of prayers always being answered. Do these prayers. There are certain du'as and da'awat, Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says, will never be answered. What do you think are the prayers that are never answered? Some of them are this. Imam Sadiq mentions, Arba'un la yastajabu lahum du'a. 4. الرجل جالس في بيته. You can translate this. الرجل جالس في بيته. A man who is sitting in his home. يقول يا رب ارزقني. He's sitting in his home watching TV, has all the subscriptions to all the different TV channels and all the sports channels. رب ارزقني. Give me rest. Give me rest. And he's upset. Why did this, for example, investment go down? He just put some money in cryptocurrency. Why does it go up? Why does it go down? Work. فَيَقُولُ لَهُ أَلَمْ آمَرُكَ بِالطَّلَبِ. Didn't I command you to seek? Didn't Allah, the tradition has, didn't Allah command you to seek and work hard? Prophet Adam alayhi salam, he came to this world. Did Allah throw the fruit, for example, on his head, for example, from the heavens, from the skies? Or did he have to grow fruit and vegetables from himself? Our grandfather, Prophet Adam, which one? Did it miraculously come from the sky? Or did he have to plant it and grow it and work hard for it? The tradition has a person that works hard in this world, his sins will be forgiven. Person that works hard for his family members, for himself, telling you, the men and those that are sustaining their families, working hard in this world for God to support your families is an act of worship. To sit at home and to be, for example, lazy is not allowed. Actually, Imam Bagha alayhi salam's an interesting tradition. It talks about a person that is lazy when it comes to the world will be more lazy, the tradition says, will be more lazy for the hereafter. Did you understand what I said? A person that is lazy for this world will be lazier for the hereafter. This world he sees. Right away he'll see the effects. He works, he gets it. Then how is he going to work for a hereafter that he doesn't see if he doesn't work for this world? Laziness. Actually, one of the scholars was saying laziness is not as, sometimes we think of, sins of ghaibat, zina, drinking alcohol. These are huge sins, right? We say, they're mentioned. One of our great scholars says there is something that is not necessarily a sin, but in it involves all the different sins. One of them is laziness. Laziness. It's not itself necessarily a sin. But if a person is lazy, he will cause destruction of himself. He won't seek money. He won't seek work. He won't make prayer. Most of people, if you ask them, youth today, why don't you do your salat? Laziness. It's not beliefs. Laziness. I don't feel like I can't. Every day, 5 times, it's too hard. Laziness. Maybe, inshallah, we'll talk about this laziness later on. The scholar says not necessarily a sin, but it's surrounded by sins. So therefore, if you work hard for your world, you will work hard for your hereafter. And you always see, I've seen in communities, usually, the most pious of people, the most active people, also are active at their own work, or active in their own family. So the first is this prayer will not be answered. To sit at home, God give me rizq, God give me money. This prayer will not be answered. It's from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. What other prayer is not answered? وَرَجُلٌ كَانَتْ لَهُ إِمْرَأَ فَدَعَا عَلَيْهَا. You have a wife, and you make prayer against her. You pray against the wife. You say, God curse you. God, for example, this to you, to whoever belongs. You curse her. That prayer, don't worry. Those that have spouses here, don't worry about the prayers of your spouse, especially when you didn't do anything, because that is not in the prayers. It will not be answered. وَرَجُلٌ كَانَتْ لَهُ إِمْرَأَ فَدَعَا عَلَيْهَا. He prays against her. It says, فَغِيُّ أَلَمْ أَجْعَلْ أَمْرَهَا بِيَدِكَ. Didn't I give her affairs to you? Aren't you entrusted with her? Third, وَالرَّجُلٌ كَانَ لَهُ مَالٌ فَأَفْسَدَهُ. A person has lots of money, or has money, has wealth, and he corrupts it, he wastes the money. He buys whatever there is online, he buys every day. For example, that company online, e-commerce, is that delivery man is there every day, knows the house very well. And you actually become very friendly with him because every day he's there. He wastes money, and there's so many things in this country. They say the average American owns something like 100,000 or 300,000 items. Just items. Think of every one item in your house. How much do you have? Too many items. You don't even know what to do with it. It's too much. They say that the toys and the books in the U.S. are equivalent to 50% of the toys and the books of the world around. 50%. And it's like, United States children are like 3% of the world's population, has like 50% of the toys and books. Too much. Overabundance. Overabundance. Why? We see that a person wastes his money, then says, Ya Rabbi rzuqni, give me money, give me money. You just wasted it all. And then that hadith has, Alam amuruka bil iqtisad. Iqtisad here doesn't mean economy. Iqtisad means good measure. Good measure, adequate measure. Didn't I tell you not to do israf? Didn't I tell you not to do too much? To have a normal. Don't be too cheap and don't waste it. The fourth, وَالرَّجُلٌ كَانَ لَهُ مَالٌ. A person has money, but he does in a way بِغَيْرَ بَيِّنَةٍ. He, for example, maybe does a transaction without witnesses. He gives his money, here you go, for example. He trusts the money with someone without any witnesses. And the tradition has, Alam amaruka bishahada. Didn't I tell you that you should have witnesses? You give someone, for example, money. You can have it. You can write it on a piece of paper or have a witness for you, for example. Say, look, didn't you witness? I gave him this money. You give him back the money. You have a witness for yourself. Many times we make deals within the community without the proper witnesses, without putting it on paper, for example. And therefore, this prayer that Imam Sadiq alayhi salam of 4 cases that is not answered is because of us, right? So the first was a person that asks for wealth but doesn't work, stays at home. It will not be answered. A person who has a spouse and makes prayer against her. Third, a person that has money but wastes it. And fourth, a person that has business or does something with his money and doesn't have witnesses. So that is the third part. I'm going to talk about the fourth and fifth. Inshallah, we'll end. The fourth thing that causes us despair, and there's other things that cause us despair. Sometimes as a community we compare our lives with other people's lives. We say, mashallah, look at him. For example, they come to the school, they come to the masjid. For example, look at the car they drive. How come I don't have that car? You go to their house. So, oh, look at them. They have their house. And look at my house now. You compare. Look at their children. Look how many they have. I only have a few, for example. You keep comparing and comparing. Or, for example, you have 2 kids. One of them is from is a cousin. One of them is excelling in school. One of them is developing faster, is talking faster, walking faster. Your child is, why isn't he walking? Why isn't he talking? Why isn't, and you compare, why is this one not as healthy? Comparison is not allowed. Comparing what you have to others, it just makes you upset. Being happy with what you have. Being, in a way that Allah, knowing and trusting God that what He gives you is good. We're in a very terrible situation. Sometimes we even eat food in a restaurant or eat food at home or whatever and say, oh, this isn't good. You complain about the food. No. That is my rizq. That is what Allah has given me. I should pray and thank Allah. I'm not sleeping, starving tonight. Comparing your life to others. Remember, either maybe he worked harder than you. Maybe this person studied when you were hanging out with your friends, for example. He worked more harder for it, for example. Or 2, that is your rizq. Allah wants you. Maybe if you have too much, it's going to be bad for you. Or maybe there is actually much goodness in this, life that we have. When we look at the life of the scholars and ulama, many times they would think that calamities and misfortune is a blessing from Allah. And whenever they became super rich or they had richness, they would think Allah doesn't want Allah wants to bring something bad for them. They're very afraid. I'm not saying that we ask for poverty. I'm saying those that have misfortune, look at misfortune with a different light. Sometimes this misfortune is going to cause you to excel. Sometimes this misfortune is a lutf khafiyya from God, is a hidden discomfort. It's waking you up. Sometimes some of our scholars, one of the worst things we can imagine is loss of a child, loss of a grandson, for example. Some of them would look at the scholars would look at this as a lutf khafiyya. Say whatever is from God, there's purpose in it. There's reason for it. Sometimes I gave you this story that our teacher of akhlaq, Hajj Mushtahidi, would tell us that a person comes home, maybe 40, 60 years ago, and says, wife, turn on the light, for example, bring food for us. And she says, we don't have food tonight. He says, okay, there's no food. Wife, then why are the lights off? Turn on the light. Bring some oil, turn on the lights. We don't have oil. We ran out of money. We don't have oil. We don't have food. We don't have oil. It's dark, and I'm starving. I maybe would complain. Say, God, what kind of life is this? Darkness. At least you give me some light. I'm starving. I'm in dark. He said, this worshiper of God prayed to the morning and said, what kind of blessing did you give me tonight? I'm starving, and I don't have light. This is a blessing for me. How can someone imagine this is a blessing? When I heard this story, it took me many years to understand this. Not again, we don't ever pray for this, but sometimes in this misfortune and hardship, there's this nur and light that God is elevating you to this certain status that He only gives to His confidence, His special friends, His loyalists. And Allah is maybe raising this person to that rank to be a wali of God, a friend of God. Because whenever we see for the disbeliever, for the zalim oppressor, He always gives them whatever they want sometimes. He gives them muhla and respite. But sometimes He gives for the believer, the prophets and their successors, He gives them challenges, and those challenges makes them grow. You see a teacher, for example, sometimes you have two students. One, he gives them okay workout, gives them okay training. But one student that he sees lots of potential, he really works and gives them such hard training that kid almost wants to quit. But that kid will be the one that will become the best student when trained or in sports, because the trainer gave him the hardest of tests and tribulations and makes him rise and excel. If you live life in whatever you want, you're always fed, you're always slept, how are you going to grow? So God gives us sometimes troubles and tribulations so that we can grow, inshallah. The last part is that we have factors of despair, is living in a mechanical lifestyle, living in a lifestyle that has no religion, has no belief, has no nur, has no light. Because those that are corrupt and those that do not believe, they are the ones that have despair. Because the friend of God, there's no hope for him, there's no fear for him. The friend of God, there's no huzn for him, there's no grief for him. Whatever life throws at him, he's happy because it's from him. Because he sees this is in the path of obedience. So what causes, if I ask you, Prophet Nuh alayhi salam, to build an ark, a ship, while everyone is laughing at him? See, sometimes you do something and everyone is with you. Oh, I want to go to medical school. Good job for you, for example. I'm going to go to law school. Very good. Let me help you, support you. Sometimes you do something, you have a dream or aspiration, everyone is against you. Prophet Noah was commanded to build an ark when there's not really an ocean, for example, very near, and the dry plains. Everyone was against him. They were making fun of him. What caused him not to lose hope? Trust in God. Belief in God. This is the main factor that I want you to focus on, is that when you truly have a great relationship with God, you believe in Him, and you trust Him, and you love Him, and you worship Him, then you will never have huzn, truly, you'll never have grief, you never have despair. And you see many of these people, sometimes we have, for example, during the Iran-Iraq war, we had people that many times the soldiers that were fighting against Saddam, they were outnumbered. Some of them, with the hope they had, some of them like Shahid Ibrahim Hadi, they say that he would recite Tasbihat Fatima to Zahra alayhi salam. When he was troubled and the enemy was numerous, They say he would recite tasbihat to Fatima. Why do you think he'd recite this? He says because this tasbihat came with Sayyidah Fatima had difficulty at the house. Instead of this difficulty being, for example, getting a servant or something, some help, Rasulullah gave her this tasbihat. So it solved the problems of Sayyidah Fatima. He says, why wouldn't it solve my problems? So he taught this in the battlefield, and everyone said whoever had a problem in the battlefield, they did tasbihat to Fatima to Zahra alayhi salam. This gave hope, and these people, they defended themselves. They never lost any territory, alhamdulillah, to Saddam Hussein. So therefore, a person that truly his hope is not with what his hand has. His hope is with God. As we said, that ghanai, Imam Hussein says, Allahumma ja'al ghanai fi nafsi. Make my richness in me. Make my capability in me. Give my heart so much hope, so much love that is my richness. So hope is one of those, that capital, raja is one of the capital that Allah gives. And the sixth thing is that person that has a special relationship with God, no matter how much their problems are, no matter how abundant the enemy is, they know that it is not within their hands what is going to relieve them. It is what Allah has, and Allah will give them victory, inshallah. And this last thing is, we have hope in the Imam of the age, and Imam al-Zaman, that eventually one day this world will be inherited by the righteous. And one day, all of it we have in tradition, all of it, this world will be under the government of the Imam of the age. We know eventually, however much oppression there is today, eventually all of this will be removed and he will be our leader, inshallah. Let's recite salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajjal farajah. We ask Allah to forgive the sins of ourselves, not to ever us to lose hope. Give victory to all those that are fighting against oppression, inshallah. To give protection to the oppressed, inshallah. To give mercy and bless the souls of the departed, especially our family members. And to expedite the return of the Imam of the age with a salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.